Before we dive in, tell me, where are you watching from right now? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And would you ever accept a ride from a stranger on a stormy night? Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the next story. The rain came down in sheets, pounding against the cracked pavement, soaking through the thin coat Juliet clutched tight around her shoulders. She pulled her little boy closer, shielding him as best she could from the storm. The bus that was supposed to take them home had broken down miles back, and now the night stretched dark and merciless around them. "Mommy, I'm cold," whispered Liam, his voice trembling against her side. "I know, baby," Juliet murmured, brushing his wet hair from his face. "Just a little longer. We'll find shelter soon." But she didn't believe it. Not really. The storm was relentless, the road empty. Every step felt heavier than the last. Then headlights cut through the darkness. A sleek black car slowed beside them, its engine purring like a predator in the night. The tinted window rolled down, and a deep voice carried over the roar of rain. "You'll freeze out here." Juliet froze, clutching Liam tighter. The man behind the wheel was impossible to ignore. Even in the half-light, his presence filled the air, tall, broad-shouldered, his eyes glowing faintly with something unnatural. "Get in," he said. It wasn't a request. Her heart hammered. Every warning she'd ever heard screamed at her not to. But Liam shivered violently in her arms, and desperation clawed at her chest. "Please," the man added, softer this time, his voice velvet and steel all at once. "The storm isn't safe. Not for you. Not for him." Juliet hesitated only a moment longer before opening the door. Warmth washed over them as she slid into the leather interior, cradling Liam against her. The man didn't look at her right away. His hands gripped the wheel, his jaw tight, his profile sharp in the glow of passing streetlights. But then his gaze flicked to her in the mirror, eyes the color of molten silver, glowing faintly in the dark. "You shouldn't have been out here," he said. "I didn't have a choice," she whispered. For a long stretch, the car was silent except for the rain hammering against the windows. Yet she couldn't shake the strange pull she felt in his presence, as if the air itself bent toward him. "Where are we going?" she asked finally, her voice small. The man's lips curved into something between a smile and a command. "Somewhere safe." Her chest tightened. Safe. The word sounded more like a promise than a destination. She woke to warmth and silence. Juliet blinked, disoriented. She wasn't in the car anymore. She was lying on a massive bed draped in velvet, in a room bigger than her entire apartment. The air smelled faintly of cedar and smoke. Moonlight poured through tall windows, illuminating stone walls and carved wooden beams. Her breath caught. This wasn't just a house. It was a mansion. She sat up quickly, panic rising. "Liam?" Before she could move, the heavy door creaked open. Liam padded in, wrapped in a thick blanket, his cheeks flushed with warmth. "Mommy," he said, smiling sleepily. "The man said we're safe here." Behind him, the man himself entered, tall, commanding, impossibly graceful. His silver eyes found hers, burning with something ancient and unyielding. "You're awake," he said simply. Juliet's voice shook. "Why am I here? Who are you?" The man stepped closer, his presence filling the room. "My name is Romeo. And this is my home." He paused, his gaze locking onto hers with such intensity she couldn't breathe. "But tonight, fate made it yours as well." Her heart stuttered. "What do you mean?" He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a growl that vibrated through her chest. "You crossed my path in the storm. You carry strength you don't yet see." And now, his hand hovered near her cheek but didn't touch. His silver eyes blazed with a truth that felt older than the world itself. "You're bound to me. Bound by fate." The room seemed to close in, the bond humming between them like a living thing. She wanted to deny it, to run, to protect Liam, but some part of her, deep and undeniable, knew her life had just changed forever. The storm still raged outside, but within the mansion the air was heavy with silence. Juliet sat on the edge of the massive bed, her fingers clenching the blanket. Liam had curled against her, already drifting into sleep, his small breath steady. She envied his peace. Her own thoughts raced like the storm outside. The man, Romeo, stood near the tall windows, his broad frame outlined by moonlight. His silver eyes glowed faintly, not like reflections, but as if they carried their own light. Shadows seemed to shift around him, clinging to his presence as though he commanded them. Juliet forced herself to speak. "Why am I here? Why didn't you take us to town?" His gaze slid from the window to her. Even across the room, the weight of it pressed against her chest. "Town," he repeated quietly, as if testing the word. "You would have been torn apart before you reached it." Her brow furrowed. "What are you talking about?" Romeo crossed the room slowly, every step measured, deliberate. He stopped a few feet away, his presence overwhelming. "There are others who roam these woods at night. Beasts. Predators. Some wear human skin. They hunt storms like this." Her blood ran cold. "You're trying to scare me." "If I wanted to scare you," he said evenly, "you'd already be afraid to breathe." His voice softened a fraction. "I don't want your fear, Juliet. I want your understanding." She stiffened at the sound of her name. She hadn't given it to him. "How do you?" "I know more than you think." His words cut across hers like steel. Then, softer, "And I know you've carried pain heavier than this storm for far too long." Her throat tightened. She turned away, unwilling to let him see the tears threatening to rise. She had promised herself she would never let a man break her again. Not after Liam's father left, not after nights of scraping coins together to feed her son, not after the loneliness that settled like frost over her heart. But Romeo's words sliced too close to truths she never spoke aloud. "You can't keep us here," she whispered. "We'll leave in the morning." He moved closer still, until she could feel the heat of him, though he hadn't touched her. His voice dropped to a low growl that stirred the air. "The bond won't let you." Juliet's head snapped toward him. "The what?" Romeo's eyes burned brighter, silver fire in the dark. "When you stepped into my path, fate sealed you to me. You're no longer just human, Juliet. You're mine. Bound by fate. By the old laws." Her breath caught. The room seemed to tilt. "You're insane." He tilted his head slightly, as though amused. "You think insanity glows?" He lifted his hand slowly, giving her the chance to recoil. When she didn't, his fingers brushed her wrist. Heat exploded through her veins. Her pulse raced, shadows curling faintly around her skin where he touched. She yanked her hand back with a gasp, heart hammering. "What did you do to me?" Romeo's expression was unreadable, though his voice was steady. "I did nothing. The bond did. You felt it, didn't you?" Juliet's chest rose and fell too quickly, her thoughts tangled between fear and something else, something dangerous. "I don't want this. Whatever it is, take it back. It cannot be undone." His voice was iron, absolute. "You can deny it. Hate it. Fight it. But it will remain. The bond is older than kingdoms, stronger than blood. It has already claimed you." Juliet shook her head fiercely, clutching Liam tighter. "I won't let anyone claim me. Not ever again." Romeo's eyes flickered at her words, pain flashing through the silver fire. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by unyielding calm. "Then fight it. Resist me with everything you have. But understand this, he leaned closer, his growl brushing her ear. Your resistance won't break the bond. It will only break you. Her breath shuddered. She turned her face away, refusing to let him see how much his words rattled her. Romeo stepped back, giving her space, though his presence still pressed heavy in the room. He moved toward the door, pausing with his hand on the frame. You and the boy are safe here. No harm will come to you while you are under my roof. His silver gaze lingered on her one last time. Rest, Juliet. Tomorrow, you'll see what fate has already chosen. The door closed with a quiet click, leaving her in the vast room. Juliet sat trembling, clutching Liam tighter, her mind racing. She wanted to scream, to deny everything, to run. But when she closed her eyes, the warmth of his touch lingered, pulsing faintly in her veins like a brand. And deep inside, no matter how much she tried to bury it, a voice whispered the truth she refused to believe. Fate had found her. The night pressed heavy around the mansion, the storm fading into silence. But Juliet didn't sleep easily. She drifted in and out, her body exhausted yet her mind restless. When sleep finally came, it was not the escape she hoped for, but a plunge into something darker. In her dream, she stood in a forest drenched in silver light. The trees loomed taller than mountains, their branches twisting into shadows. A wolf stood before her, massive and unyielding, its fur white as moonlight, its eyes burning with the same molten silver as Romeo's. It didn't growl. It didn't bare its teeth. It only stared, a gaze that pierced her deeper than words ever could. You are mine, the voice whispered, though the wolf's mouth never moved. Bound. Forever. Juliet gasped and stumbled back, but the forest bent around her. The shadows reached for her wrists, wrapping like vines, warm yet suffocating. The wolf stepped closer, lowering its head until its breath warmed her face. Her pulse thundered. Her lips parted to scream. And she woke. Juliet bolted upright in the enormous bed, her skin slick with sweat, her breath ragged. Moonlight spilled through the tall windows, pale and cold. Liam still slept peacefully beside her, undisturbed. But Juliet's hands shook as she lifted them. There, faint and glowing in the dim light, strange markings curled across her skin. Black as ink yet alive with silver flickers, like tattoos she had never chosen. They pulsed faintly, in rhythm with her heartbeat. No, she whispered, rubbing at her wrists, her forearms, trying to scrub the markings away. But they didn't fade. They pulsed stronger, as if mocking her. The door creaked. Juliet jerked toward it. Romeo stood in the doorway, his tall frame cloaked in shadows, his silver eyes burning even brighter than in her dream. Her voice cracked. What's happening to me? He entered slowly, closing the door behind him. The air seemed to shift with his presence, heavy and charged. He didn't answer immediately, just approached, his gaze fixed on the marks glowing on her skin. They've awakened, he said finally, his voice low and certain. Juliet shook her head. No. This isn't real. I'm dreaming again. Romeo crouched near the bed, his eyes level with hers. You're not dreaming, Juliet. The bond is real. And now, it's claiming you. Her throat tightened. Stop saying that. I don't want this. I don't want you. For the first time, something flickered across his face, pain, sharp and fleeting. But when he spoke, his voice was steady, unshaken. Want has nothing to do with it. Fate chose. The bond chose. And your body answers whether you accept it or not. Juliet wrapped her arms around herself, shivering despite the warmth of the room. You make it sound like I'm your prisoner. Romeo's eyes narrowed, his jaw tightening. You are not a prisoner. You are my mate. The words landed like thunder in her chest, heavy and terrifying. She shook her head violently. No. No, I was married once. I know what it's like to be owned. I won't do it again. Romeo leaned closer, his voice dropping to a growl that brushed against her skin. You think this is ownership? This bond is not chains. It is fire. It burns in both of us. Look. He extended his hand, palm up. Slowly, reluctantly, Juliet placed her trembling hand in his. The moment their skin touched, her world erupted. Heat rushed through her veins, shadows curling around their hands, glowing silver where their skin met. Her heartbeat fused with his, pulsing as one. For a fleeting instant, she saw through his eyes, herself, glowing with the same silver light, fragile and strong all at once. She gasped and yanked her hand back, clutching her chest. What was that? Romeo's gaze didn't waver. The bond. It shows you truth. No lies can hide in it. Juliet trembled, her mind racing. I can't live like this. I didn't ask for it. Romeo straightened, his expression carved in steel. Neither did I. But fate doesn't wait for permission. It never has. He turned toward the window, his voice quieter now. I resisted once. Long ago. It nearly destroyed me. The bond doesn't break, Juliet. It only bends until you shatter. And I will not let that happen to you. Her breath hitched. Why me? Why not someone stronger, someone worthy? Romeo turned back, his silver eyes blazing with conviction. Because you are stronger than you believe. You carried heartbreak and still stood tall. You raised a child alone when the world would have left you broken. That strength calls to me more than any throne or crown ever could. Juliet's eyes burned with tears she refused to let fall. She turned her face away, her voice breaking. I don't want to be chosen. I want to choose. Romeo's silence stretched heavy between them. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than she expected. Then choose, Juliet. Choose to fight me. Choose to hate me. But don't lie to yourself and say you don't feel it. The bond is already in you. Her chest heaved, her body trembling as the marks on her skin pulsed brighter. She hated him for being right. She hated the way her pulse quickened when his gaze locked on hers. She hated the bond most of all, because beneath the fear, beneath the denial, something deep inside her already recognized him. Romeo stepped back, giving her space, though the air still carried his presence. He nodded once toward Liam, still asleep and peaceful. Rest. For his sake, if not your own. Tomorrow, you'll need your strength. Juliet whispered hoarsely, for what? Romeo's silver eyes darkened. Because the rivals will come for you now. And they will not stop until either you are mine, or you are dead. The door closed behind him, leaving her in silence, her son's soft breathing the only comfort. Juliet clutched her arms tightly, her body still burning with the bond's fire. For the first time, she understood. This wasn't just a mistake, or a storm, or a stranger's mansion. This was fate. And fate had already claimed her. The storm had passed by morning, but Juliet's heart still thrashed like it was caught in the downpour. She hadn't slept since her dream of the wolf, since the marks burned across her skin. Even now, as she dressed in clothes too fine, too soft for her, she kept glancing at her wrists, half expecting the markings to flare back to life. Liam played quietly with a carved wooden wolf he'd found near the fireplace, his laughter soft and untroubled. Juliet envied him, but her worry only deepened. He seemed too comfortable here. Too trusting of Romeo. The door opened, and there he was again. Romeo. Tall, unyielding, every line of him cut from shadow and steel. Yet his eyes, those silver eyes, held something that made her chest ache against her will. "Come," he said simply. Juliet wanted to refuse, but Liam had already jumped up, eager to follow. She swallowed her protest and trailed after them, through winding hallways of stone and glass, where sunlight bled in like silver fire. The mansion wasn't just a home, it was a fortress, and beyond that, something older. He led them into a vast chamber, its high ceiling arched with beams carved into the shapes of wolves, its walls hung with banners worn by centuries. At the center stood a long table etched with symbols that pulsed faintly with the same silver glow as his eyes. Juliet stopped short. "What is this place?" Romeo turned, his presence filling the room. "The heart of my lineage. Every Alpha King before me has stood here, bound by blood and fate." His gaze flicked briefly to her wrist. "And now, you stand here too." Juliet clenched her fists. Don't make me part of this. I don't want your fate. I don't want any of this." Romeo studied her quietly, then moved closer, lowering his voice. "You think I wanted it? To inherit a throne carved from war? To command wolves who would sooner die than bow? To carry bloodlines heavy with ancient curses? Fate does not ask what we want. It only demands what we are." His words cut deeper than she expected. For a moment, she saw not just the Alpha King, but a man burdened by chains no less heavy than hers. Before she could answer, Liam tugged at her cloak. "Mommy," he whispered, holding something small in his hand. "It fell from your bag." Juliet froze. In Liam's palm lay her old wedding ring. The silver band glinted in the pale light, scratched and worn from years of wear. Once it had been a promise of forever, but now it was nothing but a scar made metal. She'd kept it only as a reminder, of betrayal, of survival. Romeo's gaze sharpened the instant he saw it. His hand shot out, catching hers before she could snatch it away. "Where did you get this?" His voice was low, dangerous. Juliet's heart slammed. "It's mine. From before. From another life." His silver eyes blazed, the glow spilling brighter than she had ever seen. He turned the ring in his fingers, and for a breathless moment, Juliet swore the band itself shimmered faintly with silver fire. "This is no ordinary ring," Romeo murmured, almost to himself. "Do you feel it? The way it hums?" Juliet shook her head fiercely. "It's just metal. Just a broken promise." Romeo's grip tightened. "No. It's more. This ring carries a mark of power. Old power. Whoever gave this to you was no ordinary man." Her stomach dropped. Images of her ex-husband flooded her mind, the empty promises, the lies, the night he left. "No," she whispered. "He wasn't, he was nothing." Romeo's gaze pierced her, silver fire burning. Then he didn't know what he carried. But fate did. That's why the bond ignited so fiercely when you stepped into my path. The ring is a relic. A key. And it chose you. Juliet ripped her hand free, clutching the ring to her chest. "No. It chose nothing. I won't let you twist my past into your fate." Romeo's jaw flexed, his voice dropping to a growl. "Juliet, you don't understand. That ring could be the only thing keeping you alive." Before she could respond, the chamber doors slammed open. A wolf staggered inside, half-shifted, blood streaking his chest. He collapsed to one knee before Romeo, his golden eyes dim. "My king," he rasped, his voice broken. "The rivals, they know." Romeo stiffened. "What do they know?" The wolf's gaze flicked to Juliet. "They know of the human. The bond. They come for her." Juliet's blood ran cold. Romeo's presence exploded outward, shadows curling violently around him. His growl shook the chamber, primal and unrestrained. Marduk. The name fell from his lips like a curse. Juliet's hands trembled. Who is Marduk? Romeo's silver eyes met hers, burning with lethal promise. The rival Alpha. He has hungered for my throne for years. Now he sees you as his weapon. If he takes you, if he breaks you, he breaks me. And with me, the kingdom. Juliet clutched Liam tightly, her voice breaking. I never asked for this. I never asked to be part of your war. Romeo stepped closer, towering over her, his gaze fierce and unyielding. Neither did I. But fate doesn't care what we ask. It only binds what it chooses. And it chose us. His hand brushed the ring again, his touch searing her skin. And with this, Juliet, fate just painted a target on your heart. The chamber darkened, the banners rustling though no wind touched them. Juliet shivered, clutching her son, her ring, her fear. She had thought the storm was over. But the real storm was only beginning. The mansion felt colder that night, despite the blazing hearths. Juliet wrapped Liam in blankets by the fire, her own hands trembling though she swore she wouldn't let him see her fear. She had survived betrayal, heartbreak, and nights alone with nothing but scraps to feed her son. But this was a world she didn't understand. Romeo had left shortly after the bloodied wolf collapsed in the great chamber. He hadn't explained where he was going, only growled a single word, scouts. The shadows seemed to follow him as he vanished into the storm, leaving Juliet to stare at the doors long after they closed. Now she paced the wide room, glancing at the tall windows where lightning flashed across the mountains. Every crack of thunder made Liam flinch, and Juliet pulled him closer. Mommy, he whispered, his voice small, are we safe here? Juliet forced a smile, though her chest felt tight. Of course we are, baby. It's just a big house. Big houses make big noises. But her own words rang hollow. Safe wasn't a word she believed anymore. The heavy doors creaked open again. Juliet's breath hitched until Romeo stepped inside, tall and soaked from the rain, his presence filling the room like a storm contained in flesh. His silver eyes glowed faintly, brighter than the firelight. They're here, he said flatly. Juliet stiffened. Who's here? Romeo's jaw tightened. Marduk scouts. They circle the woods, waiting for weakness. They won't enter the mansion, not yet. But they're watching. Hunting. His gaze flicked to Liam, then to her, his voice dropping into a growl. They're not after me this time. They're after you. Juliet's stomach dropped. She clutched Liam tighter, feeling his little arms curl around her waist. Why me? I didn't do anything. I didn't ask for. You carry the bond. Romeo cut across her words like steel. That makes you their prize. If Marduk takes you, he takes me. And with me, everything I protect. Juliet shook her head violently. This isn't my war. I want no part of it. Romeo stepped closer, his presence pressing down on her until she trembled. His silver eyes burned with something fierce, something unyielding. You think you can walk away? You think fate will let you slip back into your old life? Juliet, you crossed the threshold the moment you stepped into my car. There is no going back. Tears burned at her eyes, but she blinked them away, holding Liam's head against her chest. I'm not strong enough for this. I can't fight wars. I can't fight wolves. Romeo's voice softened, though it carried the weight of a promise. Then you don't. I fight. You survive. That is enough. Juliet met his gaze, her breath catching. There was no arrogance in his words, no empty bravado. Only certainty. He would burn the world to protect her, whether she wanted him to or not. Before she could reply, a howl split the night. It was no ordinary wolf's cry. It was deeper, rougher, vibrating through the stone walls of the mansion. Juliet shivered, clutching Liam tighter. Romeo's eyes narrowed. "They're closer than I thought." He strode to the window, his silhouette stark against the storm. "Testing me. Testing us." Juliet moved after him despite her fear. Outside, lightning lit the forest in silver flashes. For the briefest moment, she saw them, shapes moving between the trees, eyes glowing gold, teeth flashing in the dark. There were more than a few. Dozens. She gasped, stumbling back. "God, there's so many." Romeo turned, catching her shoulders with steady hands. His grip was firm but not cruel, grounding her when her knees threatened to give. "Breathe, Juliet. Look at me. Not them." Her chest heaved, but she forced her eyes to his, silver burning into brown. "You're not alone anymore," he said, softer now, almost a whisper. "Fate tied me to you for a reason. Whatever comes, we face it together." The words struck her harder than any storm. For so long she had fought alone, carried burdens no one else could see. To hear those words now, she wanted to believe them, even as fear clawed at her. The howl came again, closer this time. Liam whimpered, burying his face in her side. Juliet tightened her hold on him, forcing her voice steady. "What if they break in? What if they come for us?" Romeo's expression hardened, shadows coiling faintly at his feet. "Then they die before they touch you." He turned sharply, calling over his shoulder. "Lock the gates. Double the guard. No one enters this house without bleeding." The loyal wolves, who had been silent in the corners, moved instantly, vanishing into the storm with weapons in hand. Juliet hadn't even noticed them before, but now she realized they had been there the whole time, watching, protecting. Romeo looked back at her once more, his silver eyes unyielding. "Stay inside. Do not open the doors for anyone but me. Do you understand?" Juliet swallowed hard, nodding. "Yes." He studied her a moment longer, then his gaze dropped briefly to the hand where she clutched the old wedding ring. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Instead, he turned and strode into the storm, the doors slamming shut behind him. Juliet stood frozen, Liam clinging to her. The fire crackled, but its warmth did nothing against the cold that settled in her bones. Outside, the storm raged, and with it the howls of wolves closing in. She knew then, with bone-deep certainty, that her life had crossed a line she could never step back from. And whether she wanted it or not, she and her son were part of Romeo's war. The storm had not broken by dawn. Dark clouds still pressed low over the mountains, and the cries of wolves echoed faintly through the trees like the toll of a death knell carried by the wind. Juliet sat in the corner of the great chamber with Liam curled against her side, the weight of exhaustion pulling at her but sleep refusing to come. She had tried lying down, tried closing her eyes, but every time she drifted, the invisible thread inside her pulled taut, jerking her awake with the sensation that she was being watched. Not by strangers, but by him. Romeo had not returned. Every creak of the mansion, every howl from outside, made her heart twist tighter. She told herself it was worry for her son's safety, for her own. But deep down, she knew it was more than that. She felt him. Not in the way a woman might feel a man she was drawn to, but in something rawer, sharper, a tether pulling from the inside out. Juliet pressed her hand to her sternum, whispering into the empty chamber, "This isn't real. It can't be real." But then the bond pulled sharply, and pain lanced through her body so suddenly she gasped aloud. It felt like a blade slashing through muscle, like a rib breaking clean in two. Liam jerked awake, rubbing his eyes. "Mommy? What's wrong?" Juliet forced a trembling smile, brushing damp hair from her face. "It's nothing, baby. Just a bad dream." But it wasn't a dream. The pain was him. Romeo. He was fighting. She could feel it, the crack of bone, the burn of lungs, the raw ache of steel tearing across skin. Her body wasn't moving, but her soul was bleeding. The chamber doors burst open, and one of Romeo's wolves staggered inside, bloodied and wild-eyed. His half-shifted form glistened with rain and streaks of crimson. "The Alpha holds them at the gate," he rasped, his voice thick with urgency. "They push harder with each wave." Juliet clutched her chest as another shock of pain tore through her. The bond flared like a white-hot chain being yanked. She stumbled to her knees, choking on a cry. The wolf's golden eyes widened. "You feel him?" Juliet shook her head violently, breath ragged. No. No, I don't. I can't." But before she could finish, another surge of agony ripped through her, stealing her breath. Her knees hit the floor hard. Liam rushed to her side, clinging to her arm, terrified. "Mommy. Don't leave me." The wolf crouched beside her, his gaze fierce. "You're bound, whether you admit it or not. His wounds bleed into you now. His strength feeds into you. That bond is life and death." Juliet gritted her teeth, shaking. "I never asked for this." The wolf's expression hardened, though there was a flicker of pity in his eyes. "Neither did he." And then he was gone, vanishing back into the storm. Juliet staggered to her feet, gripping the wall for balance, Liam clinging desperately to her skirts. She stumbled toward the window, every step like moving against a current of fire. She pressed her face against the cold glass. The courtyard below was chaos. Lightning split the sky, casting the world in silver light. Wolves clashed in the mud, steel flashing, claws raking. And in the heart of it all, Romeo. Her breath caught. He was a storm given flesh. Every movement was brutal, precise, inevitable. He tore through enemy after enemy, his silver eyes glowing with inhuman fury. And yet, he faltered. The blessed iron weapons bit deep, cutting into his strength, slowing his impossible speed. Blood soaked his shirt, his arms, dripping into the mud. Juliet pressed her palm to the glass, her heart slamming. "Stop, please stop." The bond pulled again, harder this time, until she doubled over with the weight of it. Her chest burned. Her bones felt like they were splitting. And then it happened. A rival wolf, larger than the rest, leapt toward Romeo, claws extended, fangs flashing under lightning. Juliet's scream tore free, not words, not sound, but pure refusal. The bond erupted. Shadows exploded from her hands. They weren't like Romeo's, calm, controlled, honed through centuries of command. Hers were wild, unrestrained, a tempest given form. The glass shattered outward in a spray of shards as the shadows ripped into the storm, streaking down like spears of night. They slammed into the courtyard with the force of a hurricane. Rival wolves flew backward, crushed into stone walls, their bodies broken like twigs. The one lunging at Romeo was caught midair, his ribs snapping with a sickening crack as he was hurled across the yard. Juliet collapsed against the window frame, gasping, her arms trembling violently. The shadows retreated as quickly as they had come, leaving only silence and rain. "Mommy!" Liam cried, clutching her waist, his small face pale with fear. "What did you do?" Juliet could only stare at her hands, her eyes wide with horror. They still tingled, smoking faintly as though scorched from within. I don't know." The courtyard had stilled. Even the rival wolves froze, stunned by what they had just witnessed. Romeo turned, blood streaking his jaw, his silver eyes blazing brighter than the lightning. His gaze locked onto Juliet through the shattered window. And for one suspended moment, the storm itself seemed to hold its breath. He looked at her not with shock, but with something deeper. Recognition. The rival wolves broke the silence first, howling in fury as they regrouped. But Romeo's wolves surged forward, emboldened by the strange display. With a roar that shook the walls, Romeo struck harder, his strikes fueled by more than rage. They were fueled by her. Juliet staggered back from the window, clutching her chest. The bond inside her throbbed wildly, not just pain now, but power, like a second heart beating in rhythm with his. And then she heard him. Not with her ears, but inside her very bones. His voice, deep and sure, echoing across the tether. "No one touches what is mine." The words reverberated inside her, searing through her as though carved into her soul. Juliet gasped, stumbling backward. Her legs hit the wall, and she slid down, clutching Liam tight. She wanted to deny it, wanted to scream that she wasn't his, that she wasn't a piece of property. But the bond pulsed inside her, undeniable, a tide that refused to be turned. She was his. Not because she had chosen it. Because fate had chosen them both, long before she stepped into his car on that rainy night. And no storm, no rival, no denial could undo what had been written. The storm finally passed, but Juliet felt no relief. The sky above the mountains lightened into a dull gray, yet the weight pressing against her chest had only grown heavier. The bond hadn't lessened after the fight in the courtyard, it had deepened, thickened, like vines tightening around her ribs. She hadn't spoken to Romeo since. She couldn't. Every time she thought of the way he had shouted those words, "No one touches what is mine," her heart stuttered between anger and something far more dangerous. Juliet sat by the window in the guest chamber, Liam asleep on the bed behind her. He had cried himself into exhaustion, clinging to her with wide eyes and trembling hands. She had soothed him as best she could, but what comfort could she give when she herself was shaking apart? Her fingers tightened around the old wedding ring, the relic Romeo had called a key. It felt heavier now, almost alive, pulsing faintly in rhythm with her heartbeat. She wanted to fling it into the storm, bury it in the earth where no one could touch it. And yet, she couldn't let it go. The door creaked open. She didn't have to turn to know who it was. The bond announced him before his footsteps did. Romeo's presence filled the chamber like thunder waiting to break. "You should rest," he said. His voice was softer than she expected, but it carried command all the same. Juliet stood abruptly, spinning to face him. "Don't tell me what I should do." Her voice cracked with raw exhaustion. "Don't you dare." Romeo's silver gaze studied her, unreadable. "You're trembling." "Because of you," she spat. "Because I can't breathe without feeling you. Because I can't close my eyes without seeing your blood. Because," her voice broke, her hands fisting in her cloak. "Because I don't want this." Romeo moved closer, slow, deliberate, as though approaching a wounded animal. "The bond doesn't ask what we want, Juliet. It binds what must be bound." Her throat tightened. "I don't care about your laws, your fate, your pack. I'm not one of you. I'm just a woman who made a mistake getting in your car that night." Something flickered in his expression, pain, quickly masked by steel. "A mistake?" "Yes." The word ripped from her like a wound. "If I could go back, I'd walk through the rain until my feet bled. Anything but this. Anything but you." For a heartbeat, silence hung heavy between them. Then Romeo stepped so close the heat of him burned her skin. His voice dropped to a whisper that still carried like thunder. "Say it again. Look me in the eyes and say you feel nothing." Juliet opened her mouth, but the words stuck. Because the truth was there, burning in her chest, throbbing in her veins. She did feel something. Too much. And the bond only made it worse. She shoved past him, storming toward the door. "I'm leaving. Tonight. Liam and I will find our way back. We don't need you." Romeo didn't stop her. He only watched, his silver eyes darkening like a storm cloud about to break. Juliet grabbed Liam's hand and pulled him into the corridor, heart hammering. Every step she took away from Romeo felt like victory, until she reached the end of the hallway. The pain hit like a blade to the chest. Juliet gasped, doubling over. It wasn't ordinary pain, it was as though her very soul was being ripped apart, torn from her ribcage strand by strand. She collapsed against the wall, clutching at her chest, unable to breathe. "Mommy!" Liam cried, tugging at her arm. "What's happening?" Juliet tried to answer, but all that came out was a strangled cry. The bond screamed inside her, a living thing clawing to drag her back. Heavy footsteps echoed behind her. Romeo. He crouched beside her, his hand firm on her back as the pain pulsed harder, sharper, punishing every heartbeat. "I warned you," he said, his voice low but steady. "The bond doesn't let go." Juliet sobbed, fighting to crawl away, even as her body betrayed her. "Get away from me. Look at your son." Romeo's voice hardened. "You think this pain is only yours? The bond runs through him too. Your suffering drags him into it. Do you want him to break with you?" Juliet's gaze snapped to Liam, whose small face was twisted with fear, his hands trembling where they clutched her cloak. She realized with horror that he, too, was crying out, not from fear, but from pain. Her pain. "No," she whispered, shaking violently. "No, no, no." Romeo's hand pressed firmer against her back. "Then stop fighting. Stop tearing yourself apart. You're bound to me, Juliet. Nothing can change that." Through her tears, she saw the truth written in his silver eyes. This wasn't control. This wasn't arrogance. This was reality, brutal and inescapable. Her strength gave out. She collapsed against him, trembling, the pain easing the moment she stopped resisting. The bond settled, no longer claws tearing at her chest but chains wrapping snugly around her heart. Romeo held her upright, his grip steady. "You can hate me if you wish. You can curse fate all you want. But if you try to run again, it will destroy you. And him." His gaze flicked to Liam, whose sobs had quieted, though his little body still trembled. Juliet's throat burned with fury and despair. She wanted to scream, to fight, to claw at the chains binding her to this man. But all she could do was whisper, broken and bitter, "I don't belong here." Romeo's voice softened, his breath brushing her hair. "You belong where fate put you. And fate put you with me." Juliet shuddered, tears streaming down her cheeks. She hated him for the truth in his words. Hated him for the bond that had made her prisoner and protector all at once. But most of all, she hated the part of herself that no longer wanted to let go. The night stretched long and silent. Outside, the rival wolves howled again, their voices carrying across the mountains. But Juliet knew now the real war wasn't in the forest. It was inside her chest, where her heart no longer beat alone. The night had grown still, unnaturally still, as though the forest itself held its breath. Juliet sat by the fire in the great chamber, Liam asleep across her lap, the faint glow of the flames painting his face in soft light. She brushed a hand through his hair, trying to quiet the storm in her own chest. The bond throbbed steadily, less violent than before, but ever present, like a second pulse tethered to Romeo's. She hated it. She needed it. She didn't understand it. The heavy doors creaked open, and she looked up sharply, heart lurching. But it wasn't Romeo this time, it was one of his guards, a tall wolf with dark hair and golden eyes. His face was pale, strained. "My lady," he said, bowing slightly. "You must come." Juliet tensed. "What is it?" The guard hesitated, his throat working. "The rival Alpha, he has arrived." Her blood ran cold. She had heard the name whispered, Marduk. She had seen his wolves in the storm, golden-eyed and vicious. But the thought of facing him directly. Romeo waits at the southern gate, the guard said urgently. He commanded you to stay inside, but, his eyes flicked to her son. Marduk asked for you by name. Juliet's breath caught. By name? The guard nodded grimly. Careful not to wake Liam, Juliet eased him onto the bed and followed the guard through the winding halls of the mansion. Every step echoed too loud, her heart slamming faster with each one. The bond tugged at her chest, pulling her closer to Romeo's presence, guiding her even without directions. When they reached the southern gate, Juliet's breath froze in her lungs. Torches blazed against the night, throwing long shadows across the rain-slicked ground. Romeo stood at the center, tall and unyielding, his silver eyes gleaming like lightning in the dark. Around him, his wolves lined the walls, tense and ready. And across the clearing, Marduk. He was massive, even by Alpha standards. His broad shoulders strained against armor made of leather and iron, and his golden eyes burned like molten fire. Scars twisted across his jaw and neck, each one a story of blood. Behind him, dozens of wolves loomed, their growls low, their eyes reflecting torchlight. Romeo's growl rumbled low in his chest as Juliet approached. His hand shot out, catching her wrist before she could step closer to the gate. The bond flared at his touch, heat rushing through her veins. You shouldn't be here, he muttered, voice sharp with frustration. You brought me here, she hissed back. Or didn't you hear? He asked for me. Romeo's eyes burned silver. And you think I'll hand you to him? Before she could answer, Marduk's voice cut across the clearing, deep and rough like a blade dragged over stone. So, he drawled, his golden eyes locking on Juliet. This is the human. Juliet shivered under his gaze. It was nothing like Romeo's silver fire, his eyes were hunger, greed, conquest. He looked at her the way a predator looked at prey. She is nothing to you, Romeo snapped, stepping forward, his presence shaking the air. Go back to your den before I bury you in it. Marduk laughed, a low, dangerous sound. Nothing? Oh, brother, you wound me. Do you think I can't smell it? The bond? It stains the air around her. His lips curled into a cruel smile. You, the great Alpha King, mated to a fragile little human. What would the pack say if they saw you now? Juliet's pulse hammered, but she forced herself not to flinch. She is mine, Romeo growled, voice like thunder. And that is your weakness, Marduk sneered. You claim her, and now you bleed for her. Look at you, scarred, limping from last night's fight. If she were mine, his gaze raked over Juliet, hot and invasive. I'd break her before she could break me. Romeo's roar shook the torches on the walls. Say her name again, and I'll tear your throat out. Marduk only smirked, showing sharp teeth. Then prove it. Surrender her to me, and I'll let you keep your throne. Refuse, his wolves stepped forward, snarls echoing. And we take her, piece by piece. Juliet's heart seized. She wanted to scream, to tell him she was no one's prize, no one's weapon. But her throat locked, fear freezing her in place. Romeo's grip tightened on her wrist, anchoring her. His voice was low, steady, but deadly. You'll never touch her. Marduk tilted his head, as if amused. You think fate favors you, Romeo? No. Fate is cruel. And she doesn't belong to you. She belongs to whoever is strong enough to keep her. The words slithered into Juliet's bones, leaving her shaking. She wanted to deny them, but part of her feared he was right. She hadn't chosen any of this. She was bound, caught, trapped in a world where strength was law. Romeo's voice cut through her thoughts. Leave now, Marduk. or I'll scatter your bones across my land." For a moment, the air itself held still, every wolf poised for blood. Then Marduk chuckled darkly, backing away. "Not tonight. But soon. When the moon is full, I'll return. And when I do, the bond will not save you." His gaze lingered on Juliet one last time, golden and greedy. "It will only damn you." With that, he turned and melted into the forest, his wolves disappearing into the dark with him. The silence that followed was deafening. Juliet's knees nearly gave out, but Romeo's arm was already around her, steadying her. She tried to shove him away, but the bond pulled tighter, dragging her closer to him instead. Her voice cracked when she finally spoke. "He won't stop. He'll come back." Romeo's jaw flexed, his silver eyes locked on the dark forest. "Then let him. I'll be ready." But Juliet wasn't sure she would be. Because for the first time, she understood the truth. Marduk wasn't just after power. He was after her. And if Romeo failed, she and her son would be the ones to pay the price. The blood moon rose over the mountains like a burning eye, staining the forest red. The air itself seemed to quiver with tension, heavy with the scent of rain, iron, and wolf. Juliet stood at the window of her chamber, her arms wrapped around Liam, watching the crimson glow spread across the land. "They'll come tonight, won't they?" she whispered. Romeo stood in the shadows behind her, silent for a long moment. His silver eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the moon's light. "Yes. Marduk won't waste the blood moon. He'll bring every wolf he commands." Juliet tightened her arms around her son. "And if he wins?" Romeo's growl rumbled low, vibrating the stone floor. "He won't." But Juliet heard the doubt beneath the steel. He was strong, she had seen it with her own eyes, but Marduk was ruthless, and numbers weighed heavily against them. She turned, clutching the old wedding ring that hung now on a cord around her neck. What if there's another way? What if this, she lifted the ring, means more than you think? Romeo's gaze locked onto it, and for a moment, shadows curled faintly around him, as though drawn to the relic. "The bond flared when you wore it. That ring carries something old. Something meant for you. It could seal us, or destroy us." Juliet's chest tightened. "Seal us?" His eyes blazed brighter. "To complete the bond. To make you mine fully, body, soul, and fate. Then no one, not even Marduk, could break it." Her throat went dry. The bond was already suffocating, consuming her. And yet, she couldn't deny the way it steadied her, the way it gave her strength. Before she could answer, a horn split the night. The wolves were here. The courtyard blazed with torchlight. Romeo's pack assembled in rows, their eyes glowing silver and gold, their weapons glinting in the crimson moonlight. Juliet stood near the gate, Liam held close, her heart slamming as Marduk's army poured from the trees. They came like a tide, dozens, then hundreds, their growls blending into one monstrous sound that shook the air. At their head, Marduk raised his clawed hand, his golden eyes fixed hungrily on Juliet. "Bring her to me," he roared. The armies clashed. The sound was deafening, metal against claw, howl against roar. Juliet backed against the stone wall, shielding Liam as chaos erupted. She could see Romeo in the fray, a blur of shadow and steel, cutting through Marduk's wolves with unstoppable fury. But for every rival that fell, another surged forward. The bond flared violently. Juliet staggered, clutching her chest as Romeo's pain tore through her. His muscles burned, his blood spilled, she felt it all. Liam cried, trembling in her arms. "Mommy, stop. Please stop hurting." Her heart broke. He was right. The bond wasn't just hers anymore, it was his too. Every scream in her chest rippled through her son. And then Marduk was there. He broke through the line like a juggernaut, his massive frame slamming into Romeo with a force that sent him crashing into the stone steps. Romeo roared, leaping back to his feet, silver eyes blazing, but Marduk only laughed. "You fight like a king, brother," Marduk sneered. "But you bleed like a man. Give me the girl, and I'll end this quickly." Juliet's chest seized as the bond screamed. Romeo faltered under Marduk's blows, his strength draining with every strike. She couldn't just watch. She wouldn't. The ring on her chest burned. Juliet clutched it, her lips trembling. "Please, if you're more than a curse, if you're more than a scar, help me." Heat surged through her veins. Shadows burst from her skin, not wild this time but sharp, focused. They wrapped around her arms, her hands, lifting her from the ground as if wings of night had sprouted from her back. The crowd gasped. Even Marduk faltered, his golden eyes narrowing. Romeo's gaze snapped to her, silver fire locking onto hers. Juliet. But she was already moving. The shadows carried her into the battlefield, placing her between the two alphas. Liam's frightened cry echoed behind her, but she stood firm, the bond blazing through her veins. "You want me?" she shouted at Marduk, her voice ringing like steel. "Then take me." Marduk's grin widened. "Gladly." He lunged. Juliet raised her hands, and the shadows roared to life, slamming into him with the force of a storm. He staggered back, but he was strong, too strong. He pushed through, his claws slashing, his teeth bared. Romeo roared, leaping to her side, blocking Marduk's strike with his own body. Blood sprayed, and Juliet screamed as the bonds seared through her like fire. "No." Her voice cracked the air like thunder. "I won't lose you." The ring blazed white-hot against her skin. She tore it from her neck and pressed it into Romeo's bloodied hand. "Take it. Seal it." Romeo's silver eyes widened in shock. "Juliet." "Do it," she cried. With a roar that shook the night, Romeo crushed the ring in his palm. Light and shadow erupted, spiraling around them, binding them in chains of fire and night. The bond completed, searing itself into their souls. Juliet gasped as power surged through her veins, no longer wild but steady, alive. She felt Romeo's strength as her own, his heartbeat echoing with hers. Their souls locked together, unbreakable. Marduk snarled, shielding his eyes from the blazing light. "No." Romeo's voice boomed, deep and unstoppable. "She is mine. And I am hers." Together, they struck. Shadows and light fused into one, slamming into Marduk with the force of a hurricane. He was hurled backward, crashing into the stone wall with a roar of rage and pain. His wolves faltered, their growls turning to whimpers as their alpha staggered, defeated but not dead. The battlefield stilled. Romeo wrapped an arm around Juliet, his chest heaving, his blood mingling with hers. The bond thrummed steady and strong, sealing them together in body, soul, and fate. Juliet leaned into him, her tears hot against his skin. She hated him. She needed him. She was bound to him. And for the first time, she didn't fight it. The night after the blood moon battle felt like the pause between a heartbeat and the next. The courtyard had been scrubbed of blood, torches replaced, walls mended, but the air still remembered. Juliet could feel it in the hush of the trees, in the way the wolves on the parapets held themselves a touch too still. The bond hummed in her chest, steady now, like a second life nested beneath her ribs. Romeo stood on the south wall, silver eyes sweeping the forest's dark edge where shadows pooled like ink. "He'll return," he murmured without looking at her. "Pride doesn't heal as fast as flesh." Juliet joined him, cloak tugged by the cold. Since the sealing, the world looked different, colors deeper, scents sharper, danger clearer. And Romeo, even at a distance, was within reach inside her, a constant warmth. It should have frightened her. Instead, it settled her like a hand at the small of her back. What if he doesn't? She asked. What if he slinks away and poisons wells and waits for us to forget? Romeo's mouth curved without humor. Marduk doesn't slink. His gaze cut to her. When he comes, he'll try to hurt you where the bond can't shield you. Liam, she said, breath catching. Romeo nodded once. We move him to the inner keep. Double the guard. She touched his arm. No more hiding him. If I'm to stand beside you, I can't spend my life looking over my shoulder, waiting for a door to break. Her voice steadied. Teach me to end this. He turned fully then, studying her face as if seeing the seamstress and the Luna at once. Ending has a price. Then we pay it. She lifted her chin. Together. The bond warmed, a pulse of approval from his soul to hers. He offered his hand. Come, then. Luna. They trained with dawn. The courtyard rang with steel on steel, shadow on stone. Romeo taught her how to shape the darkness that now obeyed her, not as wild spears but as shields that curved, as nets that caught, as threads that bound. She learned to listen inside the hum, to tell his breath from the guard's footfalls, a lie from truth. When fear rose, she tied it to the bond and felt it soften, dissolve. By noon she could call a circle of shadow that turned blades aside. By afternoon she could weave it into a whisper-thin ribbon that wrapped a wrist without bruising. The wolves watched in wary silence as the human became more than human before their eyes. I keep expecting to wake up back on that broken bus, she told Romeo, hands trembling from effort. Like all of this is the fever dream after a bad night. His smile was small and real. If this were a dream, I would be crueler. He touched a knuckle to her cheek, the bond humming. Rest. We have hours before dusk. They didn't get them. A horn split the air, not from the forest but from inside the walls. A second blast, closer. Shouts. The tang of panic hit Juliet's tongue. Romeo went still, a blade unsheathed. Inner gate. Juliet's heart kicked. Liam. They ran. The corridor to the keep boiled with guards and smoke. Juliet's shadows flew before her, parting the haze. Halfway to Liam's room, a shape lunged from a side hall, a rival wolf in a stolen cloak, eyes gold and wild, blessed iron glinting in his hand. Juliet's ribbon snapped to his wrist, yanking him off balance. Romeo's fist finished it, dropping the body without breaking stride. How did they get inside? Juliet demanded, sprinting. The bond hammered, not pain, not Romeo, but a child's sharp terror knifing through her chest. Liam. Romeo shoved a door. It swung to splinters under his palm. Inside, overturned chairs, guards stunned and bound with iron wire. A third horn, closer. Roof, Juliet gasped. She didn't know how she knew, she simply knew. The bond had widened, the keep stones whispered back what they had seen. They took the stairs 3 at a time. On the roof walk, the sky knifed wind at their faces, clouds bruised purple with the storm that hadn't yet broken. At the far parapet, a figure held a small body at the edge, a dagger at his throat. Liam's eyes were huge and glassy with fear. Marduk stood behind the kidnapper like a dark altar, vast and calm, golden eyes bright with triumph. Call off your guard, Romeo, he said conversationally. Or he drops the lamb. Juliet moved before thought. Shadows hugged the stones under her feet, silent as breath. Romeo's hand found her wrist and didn't hold her back, only steadied. A question flickered through the bond. Ready? Ready, she answered, surprising herself with the truth of it. Marduk's smile slashed. Ah, the human Luna. Look what becoming a symbol has cost you. He angled his head toward Liam. Everything soft is leverage. This is why you should have chosen me. Romeo's voice was low and lethal. Release the boy and you might still leave breathing. Marduk chuckled. You still don't understand. I haven't come to bargain. He lifted his hand. Blessed iron studs glimmered across his palm, a net waited for killing shadow. I've come to end your line. The kidnapper edged back, Liam's heels scraping stone. Wind howled. Juliet's vision tunneled, the world narrowing to her son's pulse flitting under thin skin. Look at me, she told Liam softly, and because he had always listened to his mother even in terror, he did. Breathe with me, baby. In. Out. She breathed slow until his breath matched. Good. Keep your eyes on me. Not on the knife. Marduk smirked. Sweet. Now watch her break. Break me, Juliet said, and you'll wish you drowned as a pup. He blinked, then laughed. She talks. She decides, Romeo corrected, stepping up beside her, shoulder brushing hers. The bond braided their heartbeats into one rope. On my count. Juliet felt the beat of it. Once. Twice. Now. Romeo fainted left, Marduk's iron hand lifted to catch the shadow he expected. Juliet sent nothing at all, and instead pulled. The ribbon flicked from her fingers, not at the knife but at the kidnapper's heel. It jerked him forward a handspan, enough to break balance without breaking skin. Liam dropped. Juliet's shield blossomed under him like a black lily. He landed in her arms, the breath knocked out but uncut, eyes round, alive. Marduk roared, flinging the iron net at Romeo. Shadow sprang, the net hissed as it met them, eating through. Romeo slid, teeth bared, the metal scoring his forearm to the bone. The pain punched the bond, Juliet staggered, then fed it back, pouring steadiness into the current the way he had taught her, the way love teaches a body to hold. Stay behind me, she told Liam, setting him against the Merlin. Marduk came on, all mass and speed. Juliet's hands rose, threads unfurling, not a spear, not a wall, but a weave. She'd practiced it barely an hour, now it came like breath. The lattice caught Marduk's charge and turned it sideways. He slammed into the parapet, stone screaming. He tore through the first layer, the second, snarling, and hit Romeo's fist on the third. They moved as one blade with two edges. Yield, Romeo said, voice iron. Marduk spat blood. To her? To a human? His eyes cut to Juliet, hate like a sun. You stain the bloodline. Juliet felt the old wound of those words, from years of being not enough, of being measured and found wanting. She could have thrown that wound like a dart. Instead she let it fall. She stepped forward, between the alphas. You think purity makes you strong, she said, voice steady. It only makes you brittle. I won't kill you, Marduk. She lifted her palm. The weave tightened around his limbs, not crushing, holding. I'll end what you are. He bared his teeth. Do it. Be the monster they fear. No, she said softly. I'll be the Luna they follow. She turned her hand. The shadow threads crawled over the blessed iron studs on his palm and drank the sanctified bite, dimming it to dull gray. His advantage vanished like a snuffed coal. His eyes widened, and for the first time, Juliet saw it, not the tyrant, but the child who had learned that to be safe you must be cruel. Exile, Romeo said, understanding her choice through the bond. His voice traveled the walls. Hear me. By right of blood and bond, by the will of your Luna and your king, Marduk is cast out. Any who follow him leave with no claim to this land. Step back now and you may live under our peace. Step forward and you die at the gate. For a breath, nothing moved. Wind pressed their cloaks flat. Somewhere below, a banner snapped. Then one of Marduk's wolves stepped back. Another. A third dropped his blade with a clatter like rain beginning. The line broke. Pride bled out of the night. Marduk stared at the faces turning from him and howled, a sound of loss too old for words. He ripped against the weave, it held. Finally he sagged. This isn't peace, he rasped to Juliet. It's weakness dressed as mercy. Maybe, she said. Or maybe mercy is the only thing strong enough to last. She released the weave. Marduk stumbled, stunned to be let go. Run, she told him. And don't come back. He did. A dark shape swallowed by darker trees. Silence swallowed the wall. Then, like thunder rolling far away becoming near, the wolves bowed, first one knee, then dozens, not to Romeo alone, but to the woman who had not chosen power and yet had taken responsibility for it. Liam's small hand slid into Juliet's. Mom? His voice shook, but there was a glow in it, pride, relief, the quicksilver resiliency of a child in a safer world. Can we go home now? Juliet squeezed his fingers. The word home used to mean a cramped room over a noisy street, a box of memories beneath the bed, a ring tucked in a drawer like a thorn. Now it meant stone warmed by fire, a courtyard that remembered their steps, a balcony with two shadows touching at dusk. Yes, she said, the bond thrumming like a promise. We're already there. That night, under a sky scrubbed clean by wind, the pack gathered in the great hall. No crowns, no pageantry. Romeo stood at Juliet's side, not in front of her. When he spoke, his voice carried to stone and bone alike. This is your Luna, he said simply. Not because I named her. Because she stood for you when she could have run. Because she chose mercy when rage was easier. Because fate bound us, and she chose what to do with that binding. The hall answered with a sound like surf, paws stamping, hands striking hilts, voices rising and blending until the very beams hummed. Juliet felt it wash through the bond, carrying her fear away and leaving something clean. Later, when the hall emptied and the fires burned low, Juliet stood on the balcony with Romeo. The forest breathed beyond the walls, dark and alive. She leaned into him, his arm came around her, as inevitable as tide. Do you regret it? He asked quietly. Any of it? She thought of rain hammering a broken bus, of a stranger's car, of a mansion that scared her because it offered more than she believed she deserved. She thought of a ring melted into light and shadow, of a boy safe within walls, of a man who had learned to share his strength. No, she said, and felt the truth move through them both like dawn. Not anymore. Below them, the wolves lifted their voices, not in war, but in a song that braided old grief to new hope. Juliet closed her eyes and let it carry her. The bond pulsed in time. Bound by fate, yes. But also by choice. And tomorrow, by everything they would build together.